you get bored every day?
I never get
No.
bored. No.
No, we don't. It's
Boredom is something we haven't experienced in a while.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment.
We started with a farm which wasn't ours 15 years ago. It was actually Eric's dad, and he was growing oysters off of his own property in Freeport. At the time we were working office jobs in Boston, and we were coming up on weekends to help. Once we decided we wanted to move out of Boston and raise a family, we decided to come to live in Freeport with the idea that we would start our own farm here.
Was it something that your dad had been doing kind of as a full-time business, or was this something that he did on the side, or how did that
It was
work?
something on the side. It was a post-career kind of hobby. He wanted to start a full oyster business. That was in the mid-90s. It had a lot of potential. We came sort of towards the end of the 90s, and we were seeing some advances in the way oysters were grown, and so we thought, this really could go from a hobby to more of a commercial scale, and so that was what attracted us.
Do you guys ever feel like the stepchild of the lobster industry or something like that?
No,
Not really.
No.
No.
We use a lot of the same technologies as those guys. We use the winches, the Davies, so we're lucky that those guys, developed the way they did, because it makes equipment easier to find.
But it's a different industry altogether. We feel like it's a complement to lobstering. It's something else that can happen on the water.
Growing oysters in Maine, there are certain advantages that we have. Probably the most important is that the water in Maine is extremely clean. We have a great reputation for a clean environment in Maine, and the oysters, being filter feeders, they benefit from filtering clean water, and it's cold water too. So oysters here, they grow a little bit more slowly, but they also take on a lot of flavor. One chef told me that the texture of the meat has a nice crunch to it, whereas oysters that maybe are in much warmer climates, the texture is a little different.
We certainly ship most of our volume for the half shell and for the raw bar, but with these big oysters that we sometimes miss, that are too big for the raw bar, we notice that chefs are getting really creative with them, and they're serving them cooked. So they will open them up and broil them and saute them and just put all kinds of garnishes on them, which sound pretty delicious.
One thing we've noticed is that when we first started, about 5 or 6% of our production stayed here in Maine and went to Portland, and it's up to about 20% now. And as we've grown, the portion of that Portland is taking in has grown, and that's attributable to the chefs doing more interesting things. The Eventide bar, they move through a lot of oysters, and they've got some really cool salts and ices and different vinaigrettes. I think chefs, as I say, as the supply is firm, then I think they'll have the ability to continue to innovate and make oysters attractive for years to come.